when you're having a baby, there's a lot on your mind. At Northwell's Staten Island University Hospital, you can rest easy with our reimagined labor and delivery experience. Our new Grapuso Women and Newborn Center provides private suites, overnight accommodations for a loved one, and a top-level NICU, all powered by the team that cares for the most moms and babies in New York. It's care made for Staten Island and made for you. Visit northwell.edu/newbaby. Staten Island University Hospital. Raise health.
Jack Daniels is proudly served in fine establishments, questionable joints, and everywhere in between. So, no matter where you go, in every bar, you'll always know someone by name.
Jack. Jack and Coke?
Shot of Jack?
Jack Daniels, please.
Right away.
That's what makes Jack, Jack.
Please drink responsibly. Responsibility.org. Jack Daniels and Old No. 7 are registered trademarks. Copyright 2025 Jack Daniels. Tennessee whiskey. 40% alcohol by volume. 80 proof.
The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At 5 minutes after the hour, welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, no matter where you're listening or to be calling us from around the nation, around the world, or who knows where else. As we continue here to talk about great stories with the American exceptionalism stories that you'll be hearing in just a few moments as we break away just temporarily for our first hour. And if you're a first-time listener to this particular archive, the Dr. Sky Experience, proudly here on Talk Radio 77 WABC, talks about many of the mysteries of the universe, from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. Also, exceptional guests from the celebrity world. And also, ladies and gentlemen, from time to time, and proud to talk about it, who else wouldn't do that? Great stories of American exceptionalism about truth, justice, and the American way. If you'd like to get in on the conversation with us, it's simple. The number, 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222. And if you'd like to email me, my pledge is simply this. I do answer every one of those emails as best as possible. My email is just drsky@wabcradio.com. And, of course, to listen to all the many great hosts that occupy this radio platform, Talk Radio 77 WABC, you can go and listen and download many of those great interviews that you hear at www.wabcradio.com or redappleaudionetworks.com. And a special thank you, as always, to our helmsmen, both Tony and Bill, as we mention every week and proud to call them friends, on our journey to the cosmos and beyond, navigating this powerful signal of WABC to you, yours, across the nation, the world, and out to the vast infinite. As we get right to it, ladies and gentlemen, for this particular first hour of our show here, the Dr. Sky Experience, we're privileged and honored, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about stories of American exceptionalism, truth, justice, and the American way. And in just a few moments, you'll meet the author, co-author actually, of a great book called A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Who is he? Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, and now a quick analysis of what we'll be talking about. Ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed by their own leaders, these elite Marines fought for their lives again back home. A cross between A Few Good Men and American Sniper. This is the true story of an elite Marine Special Operations unit bombed by an IED and shot at during an Afghanistan ambush. The Marine commandos were falsely accused of gunning down innocent Afghan civilians following that ambush. The unit's leader, Major Fred Galvin, was summarily relieved of duty, and his unit was booted from the combat zone. They were condemned by everyone, from the Afghan president to American generals. When Fox Company returned to America, Galvin and his captain were the targets of the first court of inquiry in the Marine Corps' 50 years. Fred Galvin is the real deal. Let's introduce him about this book, A Few Bad Men. We say good morning or good evening to you. Major, it's always a privilege and honor to talk to our military heroes. How are you, sir?
Yes, Dr. Sky, I'm doing very well, and we say here in Honolulu, aloha.
Wow, you're all the way out there in the Pacific. Did you, by the way, feel any of the shocks or potential tsunami there? Were you there then?
I was here, but we did not feel anything. There was only slight waves, mainly on our north shores, from about 4 to 5 feet. A substantial difference, but nothing impactful at all.
Good. God bless, because we know it could have been worse, and it's the series of many of these and potential aftershocks. But, sir, your own aftershock in the world of political and the whole military story that we're about to unfold here. It's so amazing to hear you about this, because I want to mention something to you. You might know this, and maybe the listeners might also, but in case both don't, I spent a lot of time in a previous radio and television career working on behalf of a gentleman named Lieutenant Michael Behenna. And he was, of course, charged with unpremeditated murder. We, of course, did everything we possibly could. We held rallies, we did programs. And that story, of course, sir, is in many ways similar to what the American men and women, servicemen and women, go through when they're charged with what I consider to be, I don't know the whole story, but if this goes away from the Uniform Code of Military Justice, let's begin, of course, with your experience, or start from the beginning. And I'd like to open those phone lines at 1-800-848-9222. Why, of course, because I'm sure many other fellow men and women who are veterans and other people may have very serious concerns about what happened in Afghanistan and when the United States embarrassingly left back at the end of August in 2021. Tell us your story, sir.
Yes, Dr. Sky. So before I get into my the special situation where we were involved in this complex ambush, I do want to tie it in and paint a larger picture for the audience of the war in Afghanistan was won very handily. And throughout 2004, and I would say 2005, the Taliban had been routed, same with Al-Qaeda. They had been pushed out of Afghanistan primarily and into they started to develop a resurgence in recruiting people and training them in terrorist training camps in Pakistan, but in small numbers originally. But then America, at that same exact time, decided to go with the absolute worst thing that we could do in order to lose a war, excuse me, or
yes, and
also at the same time to create a forever war. So we went from winning to having General Petraeus and General Mattis create this field manual 3-TAC-24, which was the counterinsurgency manual. And this was the seed that was planted and grew the root for the forever war. This was resurrecting the failed strategy of Vietnam of trying to win hearts and minds. And now, I would submit that any general that really believes that or went to Congress year after year and said, stay the course, and even up until 2020, they were saying we need to continue to stay this course because this is effective. The Afghan National Security Forces will be able to stand up against the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Well, we saw what happened the following year, and the Taliban went through the Afghan National Security Force like a hot knife through butter. So all those generals, they need to put skin in the game. And I would submit they need to send their brides to bed and breakfast in Bagram right now because what they were saying to our elected officials in the House and Senate Armed Services Committee that this was going to work, and it never did. But worse than trying to say let's win their hearts and minds and coming up with clever cliches that brief well on Oprah of first, do no harm. So think about the mixed signals that sends to a Marine or a soldier when they get ambushed like we were, that first, do no harm. You're in a complex ambush. That's what General Mattis came up with when he literally hijacked that phrase from the Hippocratic Oath. That works well in a hospital, but it does not work well for infantrymen when they are attacked and blown up in complex, pre-coordinated ambushes. And that's exactly what happened to us on the morning 4 March 2007 at 9 o'clock in the morning when we entered this village to do what? Well, we had all this intelligence, which in previous deployments we could go in and action. We could go in and apprehend and detain and begin to question, and if we were attacked, kill the bad guys. How simple is that? Remember when
exactly.
We played cops and robbers, or cowboys and Indians. I mean, there's an adversary, but if you don't want to win the war, if you're a general, and all these generals that are named by name in the book, A Few Bad Men, look at where they all are working now: Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman. So all of them have the same occupational fields that I did, and that is an infantry officer. So we're the guys that color in crayons and just learn to walk upright and stop dragging our knuckles. We don't have PhDs in physics or engineering. We don't know how to design hypersonic missiles or fifth-generation aircraft, but they're all working for those places because they retired out of the Pentagon.
You're doing soldier's duty over there, and that's exactly the thing. Look, I spent a short time in the Army, and obviously that's not a story for this particular episode here, but the story is so many, as we can tell, to the world here, and proudly so. Not so nice what some in the mainstream and legacy media did with the so-called Shinwar massacre. But tell us what happened. In other words, this is all orchestrated by Taliban, and it goes against the fighting forces of the men and women that are there trying to do the job that they're supposed to do. But how can you do that if the rules of engagement are all against you and your fellow, military members? That's insanity.
Yes, Dr. Sky, this happened in like 3 stages. So the first stage we expected, we went into this village to literally do what they told us to do because we were required to do this. We couldn't action this intelligence. We had to have a tribal leader engagement, and that was our mission that morning. And meaning we had to get the oldest people in the tribe, sit down and have chai, and hopefully maybe suss out some information, which, of course, in a Taliban-controlled village, this is on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan. So like I said, they just radicalized all these foreign fighters. We knew the exact location, the house that 4 of these suicide bombers were in, and instead of going just to get them, had to go and try to suss out. But before we even had a chance to stop and get out of our vehicles, we got blown up by a van filled with fuel and shrapnel. They started putting fuel. This is a massive fuel bomb that burnt the trees over 100 feet in the air.
That's horrible.
And it detonated right in the front of our patrol in the second vehicle. We started to receive fire on the south side or left side of the road, then on the north side and the right side, near simultaneous. Sniper fire on us, dragged a vehicle across the road, a mob swarmed at us. This happened at 9 o'clock in the morning. I was on the patrol. I saw it with my own eyes. And what do Marines do? Well, we're trained to counterattack when we're attacked. And we did that very effectively. We made quick work out of the Taliban that obviously the suicide bomber blew himself up, but the vehicle that was approaching from the south side with 3 jihadists firing at us, fully automatic AK-47s, we immediately returned fire and killed them. And then on the opposite side, on the north side, in a dry riverbed, why you would try to attack people in armored vehicles from the low ground in a dry riverbed, but we made quick work out of them too. We assessed that our second vehicle was not destroyed. It just had its communication knocked out. Actually, miraculously, everyone was still alive in that vehicle. However, we couldn't communicate on voice, so what we did was we used hand-on signals and understood that we were able to move out, and we fired above the heads of this mass unarmed mob, and then drove around the vehicle that was dragged across the road, blocking us in that kill zone, and we returned to base. Then something that was shocking but expected was that we had 20 minutes after that ambush, we were back on our base, and one of the non-commissioned officers came up to me and said, "Sir, this is already out on the BBC radio that you guys killed Afghan civilians." And so you sort of expect that the Taliban is going to use direct fires and that they're going to use information warfare. That was reinforced with a protest in the nearest major city of Jalalabad, and that went up to their governor in that province, Governor Starzai, went up to the president of Afghanistan at the time, Hamid Karzai. He condemned us. And then the second phase happened, which I was honestly too naive to expect that our own military generals, and we were working for the Army over there, specifically the Army Special Operations Command out of Bagram. So, Dr. Sky, that's equivalent to bringing your girlfriend home to meet your wife. The Army Special Operations did not want to see Marine Special Operators take over their missions and run up the score, which is what we were doing, and doing it very handily. But, and I know you were in the Army, but you know this inter-service rivalry exists.
Yes, sir. I know it well.
And yes. So originally I didn't believe that that Army colonel would buckle and give in, and that furthermore that the Army generals in the area would, but they did immediately. They folded like a lawn chair, kicked us out immediately. And then the third and worst phase was the Marine Corps our own brothers in arms, senior military leaders, who were embarrassed that the very first Marine Special Operations Command to exist, which was also the first and only unit in the Marine Corps' proud 200, at that time, 32 years of history, to ever be kicked out of a war zone. Well,
that's amazing.
Sure.
Yeah, Major. That's just insane. And I don't mean to cut you short. I wanted you to explain, the setting for this particular interview here. But I want to mention something, and all proud to all the service, the people that, of course, you served with, and to all military members. But in this particular case, with your specialized unit, and I'm reading this, emblazoned on the gold breastpin worn by every Marine who has earned the right to call themselves a Raider, is the Latin phrase Spiritus Invictus, unconquerable spirit. Formed in 2006, the Raiders are an elite segment in the Marine Corps Special Operations Forces Command, as you know, MARSOC, who, like Navy SEALs and Army Delta, fall under the purview of Special Operations Command. I thought I'd get that out because, just in case, ladies and gentlemen, you're joining us and you're wondering, where are we going with this? As I mentioned to you, with no apology, many times we'll talk about stories of American exceptionalism, about truth, justice, and the American way. I'm a privilege and honor to have in this short hour. Your calls are welcome at 1-800-848-9222. Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, co-authored with Sal Manna a book called A Few Bad Men. Major, if you don't mind, let's try to squeeze in some phone calls. I know we're trying to get to the whole story here. I think you exemplified it, but only people, ladies and gentlemen, who've been in the military situations like this. This is not a game. This is not something that people do. They don't need to have their hands, tied, and they're certainly not what many in the media have purported about the Shinwar massacre. That's why this story is so important to hear the truth. Let's say good morning to Steve in Manhattan. Steve, if you're with us, you're on with Major Fred Galvin. How are you this morning?
All right, gentlemen, I wouldn't miss this for anything. And the only reason why our enemies fear us is because they met the American boys on the battlefield. They don't fear our chicken-head politicians. In recent times, we had Bush Jr. attack the wrong country, Iraq. We had chickenhead Biden do a withdrawal in reverse, which was total insanity. But that's when you have people in charge who were just part of the establishment and couldn't care less. I said on the Bob Grant show years ago, I made a joke at first. I said Bin Laden was hiding in Geraldo's mustache. But I did say he was not in Afghanistan. He was either in Pakistan or Iran. That's where he's hiding. Why would he hide in the country, Afghanistan, where everybody thinks he's in there? Why would he go there for? It's just common sense, which is absent. Remember, Benedict Arnold was in the U.S. military. But the thing I would like to emphasize is our technology is so far ahead, but you have to fear the facts that the third world is taking over America. Look at New York City. Look at Somalia, Minnesota. These are communists coming in here. They'll have their hands on the largest arsenal of atomic weapons, the printing press of $100 bills and debit cards. You guys don't seem to be worried about that.
Well, Steve, this is the whole point. These are the people, the men and women of the military, that deserve to have their story told, and especially in this book, A Few Bad Men. Major, I don't know if you wanted to comment on what Steve was saying there. I think he said a mouthful, and he said it with some passion. Go ahead, Major.
Yes, and I agree with Steve. And Steve sounds like he grew up in the generation that I did, where your parents wore belts not just to hold up their pants, and when it comes time to our military, we need to take that belt off and literally beat the hell out of our enemy to where once they get the living snot kicked out of them, they understand that this is not a good idea for us at all. And we did that in the beginning of 2001 and 2002. Like I said, we won that war. But then allowing them to regroup, and as Steve had mentioned, of course, we knew that Bin Laden wasn't hiding out in the Tora Bora Mountains. He's going to be in a more comfortable position over in Pakistan. And then even after he was eliminated in 2011, to allow the war to continue on for 10 more years for what? No leader could state clearly to Congress what the mission was, what our end state, what the goals
precisely.
We just continued to push on. So we had some horrible leaders that just couldn't get the job done. The job was done, but why we stayed there, wasted thousands of more lives, spent $1 trillion, that has to be something that we hold our leaders accountable for. We can't just sit there and say, oops, sorry, or allow these men that did it to go on to this No General Left Behind program, which is they all got promoted. They're living where they want to live. They had the Gulfstreams pick them up, take them to the Pentagon, dangle the carrot or stick to the current group of generals to keep this war going. And when Biden pulled out, what did they do? They started this proxy war, making it seem like it's the righteous war that Afghanistan once was. Now we have this righteous war because Russia picked on the little innocent Ukrainians. But that's the way that this business worked. Read the book.
It's interesting. Not to cut you short, Major, we come up against something in the media, as you probably know, as these hard breaks in just a few minutes here. We're speaking with Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, co-authored a book called A Few Bad Men, His Experiences in Afghanistan. This is an amazing story, ladies and gentlemen. Time doesn't permit us to go into too much detail. But Steve in Manhattan, thank you for being part of the show. Let's now say good morning to Frank in the state of Maine. You're on with Major Fred Galvin. Good morning to you. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Dr. Sky. Always a pleasure. And good morning, Major Galvin, and thank you for your service. This story reminds me of SEAL Team 6, the ones who killed Osama bin Laden, I believe,
right,
during the Obama administration. Am I right about that? And what happened to them after they did that service for us? The team began to experience things like people dying mysteriously and the helicopter going down with half the team on it. My question is, do you think the government doesn't want secrets to get out, or do you think they want to silence people who kill these bad people that are trying to kill us, so they can continue these wars and just have a cycle of war and just a cycle of war, so that war machine can continue like our military.
Well, Frank, you bring up some good points. I want to let the Major answer before we hit the hard break, but stay with us for a minute, Frank. But Major, he brings up, as many people here, support of our military, very strong, and obviously what other way would there be? But your response, Major, to Frank.
Frank, thank you, and I completely agree that the title of the book may be a little bit inaccurate because it wasn't just a few. There was a lot of bad men, and you're right. They did not want the war to end. So when you unleash a bunch of Marine commandos to go in and destroy the enemy, to do what Marines, ground combat infantrymen, that's what I started out doing in the Marine Corps, to locate, close with, and destroy the enemy. There's a lot of people that don't want that to happen. But that's what had happened, and then they injected, as I mentioned, these rules of engagement, which tie your hands and your feet together in massive chains so you can't do anything. And if somebody doesn't understand the wink and the nod, you're going to prosecute them, and you're going to make that so visible that everybody sees it, and you're going to beat them into compliance. And who gets promoted in situations like these are not the ones that are tactically sound and effective. It's who is obedient to these unsaid rules of engagement, or the wink and the nod, like just cooperate and graduate, and you'll get promoted, and you'll have this nice tour in Europe or some glamorous job in the Hawaii. But that's what the system will do to reward people who are really poor leaders.
Frank, you get the last word if you're with us as we wrap it up for this half hour as we go to the hard break. If you're still with us, interesting conversation, ladies and gentlemen, about a very special book, one that everybody should read, A Few Bad Men. Our special guest, Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired. Frank, if you're with us, you get the last word. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you clarified that, Major Galvin, because it's so true. And I know I'm not a conspiracy theorist at the least bit, but I totally believe that, you know, the government and the people within that realm, whoever they are, and I don't know what general or whoever would perpetuate these wars. I believe that they want the military-industrial complex to continue, so they continue to make money and their shareholders continue to make money. And that's all I want to say. Have a good night, guys. Have a good night.
Well, thank you. And Major, I appreciate you as we wrap it up here just for this first half hour. But I just want to mention to you, or ask you, I should say politely, when we come back, I'd like you to talk about the next phase of what happened to you, the interrogation, the story of a few bad men, what happened to this entire unit. And that's a very interesting story, ladies and gentlemen, here as we transition from our normal conversation, as I mentioned, with no apology, ladies and gentlemen. Every once in a while, stories of American exceptionalism about truth, justice, and the American way. And who better than we could find? And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, there are many others out there. But today, and this morning or this evening, wherever you're listening to us, Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, author of a book, A Few Bad Men, has a lot to say, and hopefully ways that the American military cannot have to be strapped with these ridiculous rules of engagement when they're necessary to fight as they were trained. We'll be right back with me, Steve Cates, on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Recently, Hugh Downs was asked why he enjoys listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
I think the reason is simply that with the amount of time he has two things going. One is the knowledge to know science, and the second thing is the ability to get it across to people who might not quite understand it, and you get it across correctly. That's quite admirable.
May God keep you from the venom of the cobra and the revenge of Afghan warriors. A quote a long time ago, ladies and gentlemen, from Alexander the Great, as we continue to talk with our special guest, as yes, we transition from the normal themes of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, and talk ever so often and proudly of stories of American exceptionalism, truth, justice, and the American way. Our special guest, Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, author of a book, and co-authored, I should say, with Sal Manna, A Few Bad Men. Thank you very much, Major. I'm going to continue with the phone calls right now. Let's say good morning to Joaquin in Pennsylvania. You're on with Major Fred Galvin. How are you this morning, sir?
Good morning, gentlemen, Dr. Sky. Major, I am really so sorry for the ordeal that you had to go through. You know, it's a real shame. I really have 2 points because the second one is really kind of important also. But the first one is that people don't realize that we have perpetual wars against fundamental Islam, and the Marine Corps is founded because of the wars with the Barbary pirates. And our founding fathers, Jefferson, Franklin, Madison, they came to see this, you know, especially after they made the Treaty of Tripoli, which predated the Barbary Wars, and they said America's not a Christian country and wasn't a war on a religious basis, but it turned out not to be the truth. And the second point also is that the war with Russia and Ukraine, I find it hard to believe. I believe that this actually is set up not to ever end. And the main thing is everybody keeps forgetting that Zelensky, somebody allowed him to sucker punch Russia by attacking that nuclear strategic bomber fleet, which was sitting out in the open because of the nuclear treaty.
Major, lots to say from Joaquin, always very much on measure there. Your response, Major.
Yes. It's a very good point, and he's exactly correct that we had problems with our pirates over there in the Mediterranean, and that's what Thomas Jefferson decided, hey, I want to have these soldiers of the sea go over there and destroy these Barbary pirates, Muslim pirates. That is covered, that type of history is covered in the book A Few Bad Men, where we do see that Muslims are still using this trickery, this taqiyya, where it's okay to lie to the infidel as long as, you know, you're prospering from it. So this type of tactic is still in use today. But what's sad is we expect that from the enemy. We expect that we're so stupid that we're going to sit in a shura or a jirga and have a meeting with the enemy who, although I can't speak Pashto or Dari, but the one thing I can understand is the words when they say infidel, infidel, I understand that I am the infidel, and I understand what they're supposed to do to me, but the fact that so I can expect that. But what I can't expect and what I don't want the American leaders to accept is these generals who people use as a household name, who genuflect and think that they're just awesome people. Petraeus and Mattis, they are the ones who developed the Field Manual 3 TAC 24, the counterinsurgency strategy, the winning hearts and minds, that strength is detrimental to our mission. So we're supposed to go in there with our hands tied, and that's what led to this forever war, which when you look, web search and find out what these gentlemen are doing, and you see the boards, and you can go deep and find out that, okay, as a retired 4-star general with 40 years, you're getting over 100% of your salary if you add in the VA disability. So they're getting $207,000 a year. Okay, but the board is paying, General Dynamics is paying General Mattis $1 million a year and flying him wherever he needs to be. But then you also look at, okay, what else is going on? He was on Theranos' board. You read what these guys were doing, specifically General Mattis, when he was in uniform in charge of all of our U.S. forces in the Middle East, the Central Command, and that he was sending emails. This is all documented. You easily research it and look it up, that saying we've been at this for a year. What obstacles need to be removed? And he's talking about, hey, how do we get Theranos used on the battlefield on our lads in Afghanistan? Well, America's not good with having something untested and not verified and approved by the FDA jabbed into our boys, and that's exactly what Theranos failed, and they were exposed for a fraud. General Mattis testifies, and you say, well, is this about General Mattis? He is one of the few bad men. He was, as Dr. Sky was talking about, when we get into the interrogations and the trial, he was what we call the convening authority. He was the judge.
Well, that's what I'd like to get into, Major, but I want to give Joaquin the last word. Joaquin, if you have a quick comment, because we got a full board here, and I want to just try to give everybody a shot to ask their questions and share in the story. Joaquin, go ahead.
The last one is I think that allowing Zelensky to attack the Russian nuclear strategic bomber was designed to make sure that war doesn't end, okay? And also, too, I think people don't realize that Pakistan is an Islamic country also, you know, so I'll let it go with that. And, again, thank you for your service. I'm sorry for your troubles.
Well, thank you, Joaquin, for calling us. Always insightful commentary. Major, I'd like to, before the hour ends and the next break here, let's tell us and let's share with us then the experience that you had. The hard part comes here with this whole, you know, the trial and tribulation here. To describe what happens in front of this military review board, and then beyond that, describe to us what experience you had.
Yes. To set the backdrop, there were several investigations occurring at the same time. Specific to the Marine Corps, you had Second Lieutenant Ilario Pantano. He was accused of killing alleged Iraqi civilians in the Battle of Fallujah in 2004. His case was in trial. You had the Haditha and Hamdaniya cases. They were the 8 Marines from Haditha, otherwise known as the Haditha 8 and the Hamdaniya 8. We were the Marsoc 7. They accused 7 of us of mass murdering Afghan women and children. They said 19 civilians that we killed and 50 that we wounded is completely proven false. Not just through all of our sworn testimony and my polygraph, but you read Appendix 3 of A Few Bad Men, and you have all 73 of actually it's 79, Afghan statements, and they're so contradictory that if General Mattis read that and still continued to unleash the 45 criminal investigators, the 4 prosecuting attorneys, in these other cases, they had never unleashed that massive number of individuals to try to prosecute their own, which they clearly knew that we didn't do this. If you don't believe all your Marines and you don't believe the polygraph of your commander on the front lines, then the Marine Corps has massive problems. And that's what was going on, where they did know what was going on. And when you look at all the way back to 1942 to 1944, that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt wanted a similar force that Winston Churchill had created with the British Royal Marine Commandos that had gone in behind German lines wreak havoc on command and control headquarters, and were very effective at doing that. So FDR, especially after December 7th, 1941, right here at Pearl Harbor,
exactly,
he wanted a very similar force, and he created, which stood up in February of 42. And in February of 44, while the Marines were still fighting in the Pacific, while President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was still the president, a new commandant came into office, a senior Marine of the Marine Corps, General Vandergrift, and with a stroke of a pen, one sentence, stated it is not in the best interest of the Marine Corps to have
No, this is a very interesting story.
World War II.
You're breaking up a little bit, Major, as the signal is coming to us again. Your location right now is in the great state of Hawaii, but obviously we can still hear you. I want to remind everybody before the hour ends, 1-800-848-9222. If you'd like to just ask questions or comment on this particular story, A Few Bad Men, our guest is Major Fred Galvin, United States Marine Corps retired, just in case you're just joining us here on the Dr. Sky Experience, where on this powerhouse radio station, Talk Radio 77 WABC. Major, not to cut you short from the important story here, but just give me from the humanistic side about this. Your passion to be a Marine goes deep. It's not just something that you decided when you were later in life, obviously, no. Just tell us, you started with this passion to become a United States Marine and always a United States Marine until the day we pass on to the next world, so to speak. Your story is what? When did you get started in the passion for being a Marine?
Yes. Thank you. This is a great question, Dr. Sky. My mother, we grew up and she was a travel planner, and she planned these tours all across America, and one of the first ones she took me on was a American colonial historical tour of the Northeast there in New England, and we saw battlefields all the way from Yorktown, many of the Civil and Revolutionary War battlefields. So I had never heard of anything like that. And at 10 years old, I had these park rangers and these guides describing something that was just so unbelievable, of how people were fighting, how they were maimed and killed for freedom. And that was very impactful to me. And at that age, I didn't know how. None of my family had served in the military, but I knew I wanted to serve. So that seed grew a root. And then in high school, one of my classmates had said, "Hey, if you really want to join the military, the ones that fight, there's a branch called the Marines, and they have a slogan, first to fight." And that kind of sealed the deal, and that's what led me to go in and join the Marine Corps.
Well, it's a great story, and to everybody out there, the men and women who have departed us, and I want to give a special salute out and, of course, a memorial to the Abbey Gate horrible incident that happened back in August of 2021, when you know better, sir. Tears come to our eyes, our hearts are deep. 13 United States service members died in this horrible attack, and 45 more wounded. 170 Afghan citizens died in this suicide bomber attack, which is still a disgrace to what happened when we left the nation of Afghanistan the way we did. That's a whole other story. But this story, sir, we're going to come up on the break here, but I wanted to just mention when we come back, to have you mention, that is, the conclusion of this, because it's so important to hear about this, ladies and gentlemen, that, our warfighters out there, again, I'm saying this, and I'm just a civilian now, but very proud to talk about these subjects, as I hope it's coming through loud and clear to the audience around the nation and around the world. This is so important that we salute and give the warfighters the ability not to have their hands tied or their legs tied in any situation like this. Major Fred Galvin will be right back after this very special break as we continue to talk here with you. The book, A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I'm cocked, locked, and ready to rock, Doc. Hey, working hard, playing hard, America. This is your blood brother, Ted Nugent, celebrating the American dream and our Second Amendment rights to keep and bear arms with my blood brother, Steve Cates. Stand up for what you believe in, my friends.
48 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our tradition here, albeit not as often as we would like, but we talk about stories of American exceptionalism, truth, justice, and the American way. Major Fred Galvin's our guest at the top of the hour, United States Marine Corps retired, author of a book, ladies and gentlemen, that I implore you to go out and read to find out about how the Uniform Code of Military Justice, in many people's opinions, has been damaged. What are we going to do about it? Let's continue with the callers to the top of the hour. We say good morning to Joe in Long Island. You're on with Major Fred Galvin. How are you this morning?
Good. Thank you. Very good. Thank you. Major, I have a couple of questions here for you. What do you know about Extortion 17, the loss of half the SEAL team? What is the relationship between MARSOC and the SEAL teams now? And what do you know about, if anything, wokeness infiltrating the SEAL teams? And Eddie Gallagher was almost put to jail for the rest of his life and was released and pardoned by President Trump. And I'm covering a lot of topics, but there's a lot of concern about what's going on with the special forces, such as MARSOC and Delta Force and the SEAL teams.
Joe, you bring up some good, conversation here. Major, this is interesting the way Joe has explained it, and asked for your response.
Yes, and although I've looked and read a ton of the information regarding Extortion 17, it is easy to see into something and believe that could have been retribution, that someone in the Obama administration could have offered up some sacrifice. Is there incontrovertible proof, or is it more conjecture? I don't know. I don't have, the detailed facts that show that, this was a payback that the Pentagon allowed to happen. I would think that was not the case, but unfortunately, we do have SEALs that got into a Kansas Air National Guard CH-47, which, having that many people get into a single aircraft, it does raise a lot of questions. So I do understand what you're saying, and that some of that doesn't add up. Why they were not on a Task Force 160th Army Special Operation Aviation Regiment aircraft, and that's what allows some conspiracy theory to, why was it that? Why was it SEAL Team 6 and not any of the aviation special operators? I don't have the answers to that, but once again, there was probably some mistakes made, and they probably looked at that, had some after actions, and learned some lessons that they didn't continue to repeat. And one of your other questions, the relationship between the Marine Corps Special Operations Command and the Navy.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe. I don't think we heard everything. Joe, I don't think Joe's there. Oh, you are there, Joe. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What's the current relationship right now with MARSOC and the SEAL teams? Are they working together, or is there friction?
Well, they're two separate subcomponents to the U.S. Special Operations Command, and they do work together. We have worked together in Afghanistan. However, there's right now we have elements that do train and operate together while they're in their pre-deployment workup and during their deployments overseas, but it is not normal when we're stateside. The units are not combined at home station, because the headquarters for the Navy SEALs being there in Coronado, and the headquarters, as well as all, and I believe this is a mistake, all of the Marine Raiders is based in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I think that was a big mistake to do it. So there's less interoperability than I believe there should be, just because the Marine Corps Special Operations Command decided to make that mistake and move 100% of all of their forces to Camp Lejeune. Instead, they had previously put some on the West Coast and East Coast, which makes sense, just like the Navy SEALs. But because they removed the ones out of San Diego, there's less interoperability with the Navy SEALs, unfortunately.
Joe in Long Island, thank you for being insightful. I like dialogue, and I think you brought something to the table here in this particular hour that I find very fascinating. In all due respect to our special guest, I want to give him the floor to the top of the hour. What needs to be done? I mean, obviously, the pain of what you folks went through, nobody can appreciate this, and words can't do it. But other than that, which is a major thing, which would take hours to explain, talk about what needs to be done here, because this is a problem that could exist again. I don't believe strongly in this administration. It seems like it's directly the opposite of what was in the previous administration. So give us a solution or best direction of how this hopefully turns out to be in support of our men and women, the fighters, the war fighters.
Yes, thanks, Dr. Sky. So there are some things in progress that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has designated to the former Marine Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller. He's designated him, he's a general officer equivalent in the titled SES, which is an assignment he's taken since January in charge of looking into the withdrawal from Afghanistan and any lessons that can be learned from that. But he's also designated, Secretary Hegseth has designated Stu Scheller to look into the promotion and training system. And you may have heard some of this announcement publicly here this past month. But yes. I have mentioned this on other programs, and I touched on it very lightly in the book, A Few Bad Men, that we are not promoting the best. We are promoting based on obedience and the fact that we have had our military readiness degrade where we don't have this capabilities that we once had, where we have allowed this wokeness to infiltrate into our armed forces, which is making us less effective, making us more divided. That is being reversed. So hopefully
that's good.
Stuart Scheller, hopefully Stuart Scheller puts a big spotlight on, and as I've mentioned on other programs before, that the Marine Corps says leadership can be boiled down to two things: that you accomplish your mission and you take care of your troops. And in my book, if instead of just appeasing the two higher commanders above yourself and nobody that you're leading, I think that can be repaired by having a 360-degree survey. And if the Marines that you lead, or soldiers or airmen or sailors, if they don't believe that, for one, as far as mission accomplishment, that leader, that commander, would do everything possible, legal, moral, and ethical, to accomplish the mission, if they can't get the job done, as you've seen these generals who have not gotten the job done, they need to not just be removed from the rank, they need to be kicked out immediately.
Amen.
And two, if on the second thing, as far as troop welfare, that we look at as far as leadership in the Marine Corps, troop welfare to me means not that your guys have a smile on their face, but they're well-trained, well-led by competent commanders who provide realistic training, provide the materials and resources they need to accomplish their mission, and that the best insurance policy for American warfighters to have the greatest opportunity to spend the rest of their lives with their family, with all their digits and the way that they deployed, they come back the same way, and that is through the best training. And so on troop welfare, if the men that are being led do not, they should have a vote. Seriously, they should have a vote. And people say, well, that's not a democracy. Well, if those ones go into combat do not think that their commander would provide the absolute best and most realistic training, give them every opportunity to come back alive, if the majority of those led don't agree with that, then that person in my book should go. They do not
I agree,
have the
Major.
right to lead
you
forces.
say it. No,
So
you say it so well.
You can
and I want to know
down to
yes, sir.
simple rules.
How do people get in touch with you, sir, if they'd like to? Any way that they can communicate? What would you suggest?
Dr. Sky, they can get in contact with me through the website, commandoshow.com, and they can also contact me on LinkedIn, Fred Galvin, and on Facebook at FCGalvin1. And they can order the book on Amazon. It generally sells out at most bookstores, but on Amazon it's available immediately on Audible if they prefer to listen to it, or Kindle, or they can get the hardback book. And it is a #1 bestseller, award-winning book.
Oh, Major, thank you.
Oil your blood.
I appreciate you, sir, and for all those men and women that have served and those that have given their lives to this greatest nation on the earth. We salute them, and we really do mean that. And if we're going to send our young men and women to combat someday, you said it best, we need to give them the tools and the psychological advantage that their hands don't have to be strapped in a situation where they themselves are doing what they have to do in this horrible wars. Nobody likes war, but you said it best, sir. I want to thank you for being with us, and I hope we can do this again, sir, and enjoy Hawaii. Even though we had a few solar flares or whatever is coming through the phone line, it was a pleasure and honor to have you, sir. And I was Army, but, hey, you and the rest of the people who are in the Marine Corps, I always say what, sir? Semper Fi. And I'll say it in salute to our American military. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Major Fred Galvin, A Few Bad Men. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. More exciting topics coming up here with the Dr. Sky Experience. Stay tuned for hour number 2. And that number, 1-800-848-9222, goes into perpetuity. And we'll be talking about some other things. When we come back, more of our traditional topics about astronomy, space, aviation, and weather.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
At 6 minutes after the hour, ladies and gentlemen, we come on the air here on Talk Radio 77 WABC with exciting information about the mysteries of the universe and so much more. We appreciate you, of listeners around the nation, around the world. The contact number, as always, is 1-800-848-9222. And as often mentioned, and rightfully so, we love all the emails we get. That's simple. You can send me one at just drsky@wabcradio.com. And, of course, don't forget the many great talk show hosts that occupy the powerhouse here, 77 WABC. You can go, of course, to the many podcasts. That's easy, wabcradio.com or redappleaudionetworks.com. And I mean this. I want to say thank you to our helmsman. What's a helmsman? Someone who navigates this imaginary starship through time and space, and that's a thank you to both Tony and Bill. Navigating this powerful signal out beyond the planet, and who knows, maybe out into the universe, and that is an important story. We continue now as we move toward more of the traditional topics that we talk about, astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. With no stranger to the microphone, a good friend of mine over the years, we've talked, we've never met, but hopefully one day we will. His name is Rod Pyle. Who is he? He's an American author, a journalist, a public speaker, a former television producer, and an educator who concentrates on subjects regarding spaceflight and beyond. Rod Pyle is the editor-in-chief of Ad Astra magazine, a print and digital quarterly published by the great National Space Society. He's also an author of 20-plus general market nonfiction books and so much more. A hearty welcome to Rod Pyle. Good morning and good evening to you on the West Coast.
Dr. Sky, thank you for that great intro. How are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. You know, I balance the show out here, and I get a lot of positives. We talk about American exceptionalism, we talk with celebrity guests, and we also talk with great guys like yourself who talk about these things, a published author. What's your latest book, if you don't mind sharing that with the audience? I'd like to hear that.
I did 4 in 2019, but of those, I think the bestseller was First on the Moon, an Apollo 11 book, and the one that's still getting the most business is called Space 2.0, which is look at the next 20 years of space flight in terms of policy and development and all that. And that's, I think, still being used by Space Force and the Air Force for their undergrad training.
Well, that's great. You know, I never asked you this. How did you get started in this with the passion for space? I mean, everybody has a story. What's yours in a brief synopsis?
Oh, it's easy. I'm old. When I was, I think I was 11 when Apollo 11 landed.
Right.
And I had been following it since the late Gemini days. So, you know, the Apollo 1 fire, Apollo 8, probably one of the most daring human adventures ever. We went out to orbit the moon with just the command module and had that service propulsion system not fired to bring them home. That would have been a bad day. And it's hard for people that don't go as far back as you and I do to remember that there was a time when these incredible adventures of exploration were heading off the moon as often as every 10 weeks.
Yes,
and
it's amazing.
They almost became routine, yeah. And then we locked ourselves into orbit for almost 50 years. So, but, I was still fascinated with it. The problem was I didn't have the chops you did to go out and get a PhD in anything, much less astronomy.
Well, let me qualify something here. I want to mention something briefly on this. If we talk about some great things about Apollo first, let's talk about this. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had a very interesting guest on here. We had Don Iles. Now, many of the people have heard the repeat of this. I thought it was so important, and I know you know a lot about this. He was the gentleman, in case people out there didn't hear this, who he describes himself as a hippie of the 60s working at MIT in a special computer laboratory to do what, Rod? To develop the landing software for the Apollos. And he actually worked with the astronauts in the simulator. Kudos to him. I mean, can you imagine that, ladies and gentlemen? And Rod, isn't that crazy how you could even imagine how you could land something? It's hard enough to land an airplane for some people, right? God bless. But imagine doing that. Isn't that a great testimonial to technology and sheer genius, in my opinion?
Well, and considering that, most of this stuff was baselined by the mid-'60s, so you're really talking about 1950s technology that was set on fire. So they went from room-sized computers, you remember the big mainframes, late 50s, early 60s, to this thing the size of a briefcase that could fly in the lunar module and the command module. First use of integrated circuits, magnetic core memory, but, you couldn't erase it, which is good. And this incredible computer that, while very primitive by the day standards, that could barely run your toaster oven, got them to the moon and back, landed them on the surface. Now, there was, in many cases, most cases, astronaut intervention, because no real astronaut's going to let a computer land his lunar module. But and they had an interesting system. I'm sure you've seen the lunar modules from the inside. They've got etchings on the windows that the astronauts,
special guest.
On their
I'm
height,
just curious. Oh, there you are. You're bouncing around in there in the electronic cyberspace, but I think we got you there. Are you with us, Rod? Okay.
Yes, I am. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
So no problem. So the computers were running things, but the astronauts, of course, took over either if they started to drift or for that final landing stage. And they had etchings on the windows of the lunar module that they looked past, and it was a very, dumb, simple analog method of doing it, but put together it worked. But yeah, that software was incredible and really efficient because they had almost nowhere to store it. So Iles and, of course, Margaret Hamilton, who also worked at MIT, did an incredible job.
Let's not forget her. You're right. I want to open the phone lines up here quickly because, ladies and gentlemen, we have an exciting hour with this gentleman, Rod Pyle, 1-800-8442. And in all respect to somebody who I hope is still on the line, if Yetta in Manhattan is on the line. Good morning, Yetta. I know you had a question, if you're still with us, on space astronomy.
Still here. Thank you for taking my call.
Well, bless you. Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
I have a question for Dr. Sky. Now, I do live in Manhattan, and as everybody knows in Manhattan, you can't see stars because of light pollution. However, there is one place where I go because I have a car and I can drive down, and I do like to try to see stars. So I drive down Battery Park. Now, when I go down there, if it's a clear night, I have to sort of park my car, and then I have to look all the way up, like my head almost has to go back at a 90-degree angle to my body, straight up. I wouldn't even say at the 12 o'clock spot because that would be wrong. I have to look straight up, and there is one star that I consistently am able to see. It's like a little dot in the sky, and the reason for my call is I want to know what star that is that I'm seeing. It's like a little silver
And Yetta, let me ask you, just to navigate here, this is recently you're talking about, right? Just recently?
Yeah, it is recently.
Yes,
it is.
Here we go. Yetta, this is the answer that I'll give you, and it is accurate. We do this in Arizona. If you look up, ladies and gentlemen, Yetta, you're asking, toward the overhead point now, there's a brilliant star called Arcturus. And it appears to the eye, if you're in a darker location, you're seeing it as a dot. It is a dot because it's 37 light years away. And yet that star Arcturus is also written about in the book of Job in the Bible, about the way to Arcturus. But here's the story, Yetta. This is interesting. And Rod, you jump in on this too, because this is fascinating. The star is so important to people who are in Chicago. Why? Because during the turn of the century, there was a great exposition, we call it a World's Fair, in the 1930s, and they set a telescope on Lake Michigan with a little electric switch in there, and they looked at the star, that's Arcturus, and it opened up the World's Fair. But why that star? Because 37 years before, there was another great exposition in Chicago. So isn't that creative back then? I envy them, Yetta, because that's the days of Art Deco, and that whole exposition World's Fair was literally out of this world. Rod Pyle, any comment on that too for Yetta? I mean, it's an interesting star. It's Arcturus, and it's nearly overhead during these times of the year.
No, actually, you're educating me with this World's Fair stuff. I think it's fascinating, and I do wish I had been around back then, because those were truly days of style and grace. And the only thing I remember about Arcturus, wasn't there? You've given planetarium shows over the years, right?
I have never done that. I mean, it's kind of something I'd love to do, but I've never been asked to do it. But anybody, it kind of scared me when I was a kid. Now this is the human side, and probably a lot of other people. And yet, if you're still with us, the Hayden Planetarium in New York, we went there as kids, and my sister was crying. She was just like 3 years old. And now I figured it out, because the projector, Yetta and Rod, looked like a giant insect. And no, I haven't done a program, but I thought a little humor in the program. But Yetta, does that answer your question to the best of my ability?
It does. I have one other fast question. Do you think it's possible that around that star there are planets with life on those planets?
I don't know, but Rod and I are going to get into all these great subjects. But the simple answer, Yetta, is this. More and more we're finding out that these particular stars have binary companions and maybe are planetary objects. So here we go, Rod. I'm going to do a pitch to do another program that we're doing next Saturday. We're going to be doing this. The name I'm not going to announce yet. It's a gentleman who works for JPL, and he happens to have a discovery, Yetta, you'll love this, around Betelgeuse. The name is funny, right? Not the movie with Michael Keaton, but the star, the supergiant. They now discovered a companion star to it, and it maybe gives more credence that there's planetary objects around that. So, Yetta, I would imagine Arcturus is an older star, and it's on its way out, but it's so massive. Here's the description. If the sun were in orange, Betelgeuse would be the size of a 6-story building compared to that orange. Yetta, we got to go, but keep your eyes to the skies. Thank you for calling. We appreciate you. Rod Pyle, the center of our guests, right here. You are it. Let's talk about this, what you study, and this is important. Give us an update on the NASA administrator and what's going on over there, and take us back to what happened so people know what might be happening.
Okay, so whenever a new presidential administration comes in, when we switch parties, we get a new NASA administrator. It's just how it's always been done. Now, in the past, whenever we switched parties, when presidential administrations switched from Democrat to Republican or vice versa, programs tended to get canceled. Things got shuffled around. It's very counterproductive. China doesn't have this problem, which is why they're moving so quickly these days. But interestingly, in 2016, when Trump came in, he started the Artemis program to get back to the moon. And a lot of us went, yay, let's go. Then Biden came into office in 2020, and that was the first time in my life that I saw a presidential administration basically just say, fine, keep going. Didn't change much of anything. Little things here and there, but they left Artemis alone. So Artemis keeps trundling along. Then Trump comes back in 24. The current then NASA administrator resigns, as they do. And what normally happens is within a few months, you get a new administrator. Well, they were going to bring in Jared Isaacman, who is famous for being the private astronaut that flew up into orbit with a crew of 4 and then flew way out into a much higher orbit in his second flight, called Polaris, and did the first private spacewalk and, broke altitude records and all that kind of stuff. He's one of those guys. Very
amazing,
famous, friend of Elon Musk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But a few weeks after he was nominated and went through the grinder of the congressional hearings, it did well, by all appearances did just great. Suddenly, so I was actually sitting with a former Apollo flight director that Saturday having lunch, and I got a ping on my phone telling me that Jared Isaacman's nomination had been pulled by President Trump. And I looked up and I said, "Did you hear this?" And he said, "No." And I told him, and his face kind of drained of color, and he said, "They're ruining something beautiful we created." And I thought, oh, that's very, very deep. But so Isaacman's out. We now have an interim administrator named Sean Duffy, who also runs the Department of Transportation. So either of those are full-time jobs. He's going to try.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, I didn't know that Sean Duffy's now. He's the acting, right? He's the acting for now?
He's the acting. And how long? But that could go on for a year. We just don't know, because what's gone before is not what's happening anymore in any sense. So we'll see. He's got a lot to do. DOT oversees the FAA. They're in a bit of disarray. NASA's in disarray. In the first part of this year, we've already lost about 4,000 senior people who decided to take early retirement or just quit because they couldn't deal with what's going on. And the big story here is that the Trump administration wants to cut about 25% of NASA budget.
I see. Right.
Within that, half the science budget, mostly astrophysics, heliophysics, and climate science. So the House and Senate are pushing back on this, but it's a very confusing time for people.
Well, Rod, let me ask you this. Your opinion on why the president might have, or is there speculation? I mean, speculation is not a good way, but is there any definitive that people now know, or has the president given a reason for the removal of that nomination? Any info?
The reason given by the White House, reasons kind of shoot out of the White House like fireballs, depending on what's going on. The reason it was given most quickly was that they discovered that Jared Isaacman had made donations to the Democratic Party.
Oh,
that had been disclosed 6 months previous, and had certainly been dug up, so it was just a cover for something else. That was, of course, the same time that Elon Musk and Trump had their big meltdown, so we think it was probably basically that Jared
totally
was
incredible
by Musk's removal.
Totally amazing. Let's go to the callers. I'm not to cut you short. Let's go to the callers and try to cram as many people. And I say the cram in a good way with an honor. Let's say good morning if Ted's with us in Forest Hills. You're on with Rod Pyle. How are you? Michael in New Jersey. Excuse me. Good morning, Michael. You're on with our good friend Rod Pyle. How are you?
Okay. Good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Two interesting things to say. One is my father's brother was the countdown man at the beginning.
Of which mission? I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He was down in Florida. He's still alive.
Oh.
He's in his 90s. And when I was a kid, like you, I went to the Hayden Planetarium, and it actually made me very interested in the stars. When I was 11, we rented out some space in the country, and I lie down to see the stars. And 6 lights, I can't even imagine the speed. They weren't like shooting stars. They kept going back and forth from one hemisphere to the other, and there were 6 of them back and forth when I was age 11.
Yeah.
I think there must have been UFOs, is what I'm saying.
Right, and there's memorable things like this. We never lose them in our mind, right? We always remember these things, and we have no idea. You very well could have seen, well, obviously you saw something you didn't know, thus the UFO. Interesting. Rod, commentary?
Well, the closest experience I've had to that was 1966, the Leonids. I happened to be out in my backyard in Pasadena when that amazing shower happened. And
you saw that? You saw that?
I saw it.
Rod.
The sky opened up, and it looked like an angry God was pouring salt.
Oh, my goodness. You know, Rod, I like you more, and obviously all the callers that describe these unknown things. But let me say this to everybody who's listening out there. It is alleged, and you jump on this, too, if you have more data, that I was in New York City, proud to be there, and I remember that night, and I looked. My parents, we were on top of a big building in Jackson Heights, Queens, and we saw something. But, ladies and gentlemen, at around 5:40 Pacific Daylight Time, at Kitt Peak, the observatory in southern Arizona. Now, this is not made up. Look it up, folks. There were allegedly around 5:40 in the morning so many meteors pouring out of the sky from Leo, the origin point of Leonids. Rod, they were saying that there was like 500,000 meteors an hour. Could you imagine? Similar to what Abraham Lincoln supposedly saw in 1833. So what say you on that? I mean, you saw that. That's incredible. How many did you see? I mean, was it like that great, like I described, or no?
Well, so I was in northeast Los Angeles, so even then, of course, there was light pollution and smog and all that. But it was enough to be terrifying, and I ran in and told my parents that the sky was on fire, and they said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to sleep. So I went back out, and by that time, it had sort of calmed down. But it was one of those it was like a solar eclipse. It's one of those life-changing moments,
Yeah, it's amazing.
That a few of us are very fortunate to have.
Wow. I'm honored that you're telling me that, because I missed it because I was in bright lights, but what the heck, so were a lot of people. But if you're still on the line, did we answer your question or respond to it? Go ahead.
I was going to say one more thing.
Please. And what's your name? I'm sorry, I didn't even get your name.
Michael.
What's your name?
Michael.
What is it?
Michael.
Oh, okay. Michael, thank you. Sorry.
It was 1957. I don't know if that's any help. It was something that, historically that happened.
Wow.
It was upstate New York.
Wow. See, it goes into the annals of the unknown. That's the totally unknown. But so it is a UFO, Michael, right? Obviously.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway,
well, thank you.
So much for listening.
No, thank you for being part of the Dr. Sky experience. I hope you'll continue to call us, and we do appreciate all the callers here on this particular archive. Rod, we've barely touched the surface here, and we're almost at the bottom of the hour with the hard break. But folks, if you're on the line, like Kevin and Rockaway, hang on, stay on, because we want to hear from you and everybody else out there around the nation and the world. And I throw this one out, Rod. How about all the men and women that are truck drivers across the nation? They're listening, of course, or have the ability to listen to Talk Radio 77 WABC. Give us a call. Tell us where you are and tell us what you may be seeing if you're pulled over safely, of course. 1-800-848-9222. Rob, we got a whole bunch of subjects that I want to go through with you, and maybe we won't get to them in just 2 or 3 minutes, but you've got something you'll report to us a little later about the shuttle heist, something with the shuttle Discovery. We'll talk about this interstellar comet that's coming, the third of, kind of an iteration of something called an interstellar comet. We'll do a sky report together of what people can see, and you're telling us about something very bizarre here. They're bringing a reverse Andromeda strain into space? What is that in about 3 minutes? And I know you can do that. Let's start with that.
Sure. I was feeling a little bit of moxie when I made that headline, but basically they're sending bacteria that are known to be infectious to human beings, E. coli, Salmonella, 2 types of Salmonella, up to the International Space Station, with the idea being that they'll grow them there, let them breed, and then freeze them and send them back to Earth, because what we're discovering, both with plants and bacteria, is that if plants germinate or bacteria divide in 0G, it changes their gene expression. In the case of plants, it made a much hardier species of wheat that could grow in a wider range of temperatures and so forth. This is during shuttle days. With bacteria, it appears to make them less resistant to antibiotics than they have been becoming.
Yeah.
So the hope is that they can figure out how to help astronauts stay healthy because their immune systems degrade over time in 0G, and B, help figure out how to make better antibiotics to address these things that are becoming problematic.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we also understood, I don't know, we've only got about a minute here, but the Tiangong, I watch it here. I just watched it last night in Phoenix. I've watched it a few nights before. And everybody, if you want, we'll do a little preliminary sky report here. Go to heavens-above.com, heavens-above.com. Plug your city in, no matter where you are in the world, and you'll get a listing of all, what's on a menu of what satellites are visible. And that, I understood, is what? They also had some sort of bacteria that they found? They didn't bring it there. Am I right, Rod? They found the bacteria?
Yeah, they found something growing, and I don't know that they ever determined exactly how it got there, but they were a little nonplussed about that. It's like there's bacteria on the space station. And I think it was on the outside, which is the weirdest part, because you don't expect that.
Now it's getting sci-fi-like in space. You know what, folks? More with our special guest, Rod Pyle. You can check him out. Rod, what's your website so people know just quickly before we go to the break? To tell us how people get in touch with you.
My personal website is pylebooks.com, and the group I work with is the National Space Society at nss.org.
Very nice. We're coming up on that hard break. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. If you're still in the queue, like Kevin in Rockaway Beach, hang on with us. 1-800-848-9222. We got a plethora of subjects to talk about. We'll do a little sky report later of something that I want to bring up to Rod and everybody out there that you have, if you have a telescope, a very rare thing that you can see coming up early on the morning of the 3rd. So we'll be right back with you, the callers, on the Dr. Sky Experience, and our great guest, Rod Pyle.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
32 minutes after the hour. Thank you, Ross Mitchell, that voice that you hear there, ladies and gentlemen. He obviously does a great job over the many, many years that he's been a announcer for many radio stations and many national radio shows. And we want to thank Ross Mitchell. 32 minutes after the hour, we continue with our special guest, author and space scientist himself, Rod Pyle. Rod, this is fascinating, these topics that we're going to jump into here. So one of the ones I'd like to ask you about here is this interstellar comet discovery. Describe to us what it is, because this story is really kind of something that people should be watching with great interest or looking at, because for the first time, this is the third object coming from another star system, they say. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so we had Oumuamua, which was, I think, in 2016, and that was the first interstellar object that was tracked and confirmed. And these are coming, you're the astronomer here, but these are coming from outside the solar system at kind of an oblique angle to the ecliptic and whizzing in, going past the sun, and then going back out. We're talking like 130,000 miles per hour. I mean, these are moving very quickly. So Oumuamua was one. Another one was called Borisov, and now we've got the uncreatively named 3I Atlas. And this one, the bulk of the astronomers looking at it are saying it's a very large comet, like a 15-mile diameter comet at its widest, probably 3 or 4 billion years older than the solar system, but a comet. But what, of course, makes this story interesting for us is Avi Loeb at Harvard, who was formerly the chair of the astronomy department there, and now going back to professoring. Yeah. And I worked with him very briefly in 2015. I was writing for Caltech, and we were batting an article back and forth. Nice guy, brilliant guy, really knows his stuff. But he is fairly convinced that these extrasolar objects are possibly of artificial origin. So he thought that about Oumuamua.
Yes,
because it's set up as it was leaving the sun, and of course, a lot of people said, "Look, ice melted, and it was probably a gas jet." Then, as I'm sure you've read, he chartered a ship to go to the coast of New Guinea because the Air Force thought they had tracked an object that may have been from interstellar origins that crashed into the water. Found some little spherical nuggets of metal, and in a very uncharacteristically scientific way, announced within a day at a press conference that he felt these were of interstellar origin and made by intelligent beings as part of their technology. Now, an awful lot of astronomers, smart guys like you, said, when a meteor comes in and it's metallic and it melts, it tends to go into little teardrop shapes or little spheres. So the community pushes back. So once again, with the announcement of 3I Atlas, Loeb came out and said not only does he think, and I think Harvard may have put some pressure on him, because he said, I just want people to consider this. So it wasn't as strong an assertion as before.
Right.
But he said that we think it could be artificial and possibly from bad aliens. Like this could be a probe as a prelude to invasion. So he's sort of talking about, well, how he put it was a hostile alien probe, citing the dark forest hypothesis, which is that the reason we don't hear from alien civilizations is because they're smart enough to be hiding from the bad guys. So it's getting weird, and most of the scientific community are using phrases like "this is nonsense on stilts" and insulting. But you got to give Loeb credit for.
Well, let's put it this way, Rod. Let's put it this way. Opening our minds about mysteries. I think I respect him, and let me say this: for people who don't know about Oumuamua, we had Dr. Robert Wyrick who discovered it in Hawaii, back as you described. And one of the new theories is this pancake-shaped thing that's leaving the solar system. People are saying, well, it was accelerating. And one of the science theories came up as this: frozen hydrogen could have vented some kind of gas to push it into space. That is a very, very strange scenario. But you know what? On this radio show, the callers rule, as they always will. And if you're there, good morning to Kevin in Rockaway Beach. How are you this morning? You're on with Rod Pyle. Good morning. No Kevin in Rockaway Beach. Going once, going twice.
Yes, Kevin.
Oh, good morning.
How you doing?
Good morning. Good. You got in on the going twice. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. Thank you very much for taking my call. And you guys do a great job. You learn so much. I didn't really have a deep question. That's common. It's really two questions. One is about the sun, basically. Like, how long do you think the sun? I know no one has a direct answer, but like, how long do you think it'll last? And is there any alternative? Are we thinking about any alternative at all? And two is about the government. If there are UFOs and the government has them, how come they don't expose it to the public?
You know, Kevin, I really appreciate these questions. Rod, why don't I jump on the sun one, and then I'm going to give you the floor on the second one. The sun, obviously, Kevin, is supposed to last for 4 billion years, and that's what they're telling us. But imagine if you got the fuel bill from the sun every second. Imagine this, folks. This is crazy. About 850 million tons of hydrogen, it's more than I can afford, is transferred in fusion into like 440 million tons of helium. So I think, Kevin, I think that one we don't have to worry about anytime soon unless the sun has its own type of a heart attack syndrome, which means a whole thing would just collapse into a supernova. Hardly. But Rod, why don't you go on the second one? I thought that's more appropriate for you in the space realm. Go ahead.
So this is the aliens question, right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm sure you saw the same report. Something was recently published about government activities in the 40s and early 50s around Area 51, deliberately planting stories that led up to this alien mania that took us over from the late 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Because it would mislead people from figuring out what military activity was going on there.
Yeah.
Now, this is either a breakthrough or a very convenient way to cover up what might really be there. Of course, we don't know. Then you've got all the people that came forth and did testimony over the last number of years. You know, the people that were running the program inside the Pentagon and various military folks. That was pretty compelling, but when you start looking at the transcripts, and of course this caused both the military and NASA to set up study groups, and they just didn't find very much. And the problem I had with the transcripts was an awful lot of the testimony was I heard and a friend told me and so forth. And the only direct testimony was coming from people of slightly wobbly character. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's still just kind of a big question mark. You know, I want to have an open mind about it. I think the biggest question I have about aliens visiting Earth is if they're smart enough and advanced enough to cross light years at a wink of an eye, because, you know, you have to. They're not going to come here and generate ships.
Right.
Why do they keep slamming into Earth? You know, figure out how to put on the brakes. So honestly, you know, given what we suspect about dimensional movement and all that, I would expect them to step out of my closet more than to arrive here in a big machine. Honestly,
there you go. Kevin in Rockaway Beach. Hopefully, we've answered your questions, but you get the last word if you're still with us.
No, thank you very much. That was a great answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope you'll stay with us in future programs on the Dr. Sky Experience. You know, this is interesting. I want to do a quick Sky report for the audience out there. And I just want to mention, as we move into, August 1, August 2 now, for many listeners here in this particular time zone. Very interesting. The moon's out there right now, at least if you see it into the early morning, whatever's left before it sets, it's first quarter. Then we got a gibbous moon, which means it's like an egg shape. And then the full moon coming up on the 9th is an interesting one because it's good and not so good. The good is it's the full sturgeon moon, another beautiful full moon, but it's going to ruin, that's a kind of a broad-based word, the Perseid meteor shower in a way, which is one of the best meteor showers of all. So here's the trick. If listeners, Rod, go out and look into the northeast sky, let's say now into sunrise when the moon set, you'll see some early Perseids coming out of the northeast sky, and as the constellation Perseus rises. Last quarter moon on the 16th, and new moon, I love that time, the dark of the moon. The Milky Way is at its splendor, looking south at sunset by then. But here's the big one. If you're a telescope user out there, I'm going to try this myself. Take a look at this. Saturn, the planet, will be rising. You can see it in the southeast sky. I'm looking out here right now, and it's going to be rising just here in Phoenix. But Saturn will have something weird happening to it. The largest moon in the solar system that has an atmosphere is called Titan. And it's going to cast its shadow on the big ball of Saturn. Now, some people may say, wow, why is that important? Because it doesn't really happen that often. So here's the times. August 3rd, the morning of, 2:25 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. If you have a powerful enough telescope, 200 power or more, look at the ball of Saturn. The rings are hardly visible. You see a black spot moving across. Mid-transit will occur at 4:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on the 3rd. And then for us in the Pacific time zone, about 1:30 in the morning Pacific Daylight Time. Fascinating stuff as we talk, Rod. This is amazing stuff that people can see. But hey, I'm so honored and enamored that you told me you saw the Great Leonid shower. I can't get that out of my head. In '66, I wish I saw the big pouring of meteors. But you never know, right, Rod, with these meteor showers. Some can be good, and I get a lot of nasty emails sent to me saying, Dr. Sky, you told me to go out and look, and I saw 2 meteors. I'll never talk to you again. And I said, look, no guarantee. I gave that, kind of a safety warning ahead of time. And somebody actually said, and I'm not trying to make fun of them, are these meteor showers dangerous that I need to protect myself as they're coming through? No, they're just so small, and it's just a nice light show. So, Rod, we got 2 minutes. We got another break, so take it from here. Go ahead and carry on, because we got so much to talk about, and we're so honored to have you.
Well, so I guess I have a question for you. My understanding of a shower like the Perseids, or any meteor shower, really, is that it's kind of the luck of the draw, depending on what part of the basically orbital gravel bank we passed through that was left behind by these comets, right?
You're right. Absolutely. And some of them, there's a gentleman named Dr. Peter Jenniskens. If you look him up, a Dutch gentleman, very interesting. He sent me a book, which I'll never get rid of. It's about, it weighs about 10 pounds. And he's one of the meteor experts in the world, and he says he studies these so much. I never knew there were that many meteor showers. But you're right. They come from the tailpipe, making it simple. It's like they back into your car putting out carbon monoxide. In this case, the comet, use it like a tailpipe, is spitting out debris, little particles, some big, some small, maybe the size of beach sand, all the way up to little gravel. And I forget the one cereal that I don't like that looks Post Grape Nuts. I'm sorry, not to make fun of Post Grape Nuts, but they look just like Post Grape Nuts. About that's an average size of some of these meteors. But you know what? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're still on the line, like Robert in Philadelphia and anybody else that wants to chime in, we're at 1-800-848-9222. Here at your service with great guests like Rod Pyle, a great author, ladies and gentlemen. He'll tell us before the hour's out how you can get in touch with him and his books. But for now, we'll be right back on the Dr. Sky Experience.
The Dr. Sky Experience on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Dr. Sky Experience.
Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hi, this is Dionne Warwick, and what the world needs now is love, sweet love. And you're listening to the Dr. Sky Show.
46 minutes after the hour. Thank you, Dionne. You say it so beautifully. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. As we continue to the top of the hour, let's go to the callers. And we have our very special guest, Rod Pyle, writes great books, talks about great things. And let's say good morning to Robert, patiently waiting in Philadelphia. Good morning, Robert. How are you this morning?
Hi, Dr. Cates, Rod. It's good to talk to you guys today. And I had a question with 2 quick questions on top of it. Now, our solar system, or more apt, the spur between the galactic arms that we sit on, does that waver up and above and below the galactic plane? And if it does do that in like a 26,000-year cycle, where it would start and go up and then down through the galactic plane and then back up to the galactic plane?
Wow. And Robert, that's good. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If that's the case, I understand that we were we're in that phase right now where we're going through the galactic plane, and would that make us more susceptible to interstellar asteroids and comets hitting us?
Wow. Robert, you bring up some really...
What a smart question.
I'm telling you, he should write a book himself. That's amazing. But, Rod, why don't you take that one, and then I'll jump in later, because this is a multi-faceted answer that we'll give here. Go ahead.
Well, I don't really know. I mean, that's astrophysics, and as I was alluding to earlier, we were talking about interest in space. I was an astronomy major at UCLA just long enough to discover that the differential equations thought it should solve problems different than I thought the way it should solve problems. And
here it is in a nutshell, Robert. I mean, this is just, I don't know everything. I mean, this is just something that if you look it up, it's really simple. And Robert, this is a great commentary that you're bringing, dialogue. The Milky Way, if they say allegedly 150,000 light years, maybe 100,000 light years wide, the plane of the Milky Way, if you look at it, the extent of that is about maybe 6,000 light years. Some say maybe more. Maybe this is a number somebody take me to task on. So it's a rather thin up and down. But the problematic thing is, as we move through that plane, we're in the Orion Arm, one of the big spirals. That means every 260 million years, our little dot, the sun, takes a circle around that big pinwheel. Like we talk about the Earth going around the sun in a year. That's the galactic year. But you may be right on this, and I don't know this. I don't think anybody knows it. As we oscillate through that plane, the thinner part, if you looked at it sideways, we may be moving into denser particle fields. We don't know that. So, Robert, that's an interesting question. We don't even know, to be honest with everybody, and there's no other way, the real true extent of how the Milky Way shape is, because we live in it. Some say we're a barred spiral, meaning a spiral that has arms in the center, like two long sticks that come out of it. But that's a great one, Robert. Any follow-up? I mean, you bring up some good points.
Yeah, it just occurs to me that since the beginning of the dinosaurs, we've only gone around the center of the galaxy once. I mean, that's incredible. But my final question is, if it's true that we have these 26,000-year cycles, could somebody please explain to me how the Mayans knew that? You guys have a great weekend, okay?
No, thank you, Robert. Always intuitive and very interesting dialogue. Rod, I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying we go through this precession thing every 26,000 years where the pole points out different stars. But you take this. I mean, this is interesting. There's great mysteries out there that nobody really knows, and it's really kind of weird. I have this little bone to pick with some journalists, and no, not by name. We have too many times, this is an interesting thing for you to comment on, we hear only stories about repetitive asteroids that are coming near the Earth. Some the size of an aircraft carrier, the size of the Empire State Building, and the ludicrous one, what did I say last time? 4 times the height of Taylor Swift. Now, give me a break. And they're nowhere near going to hit us. I mean, I'm off on a tangent, but respond to what we were talking about before. You have great wealth of knowledge on this.
Well, no, but that's a really good point. They come up, for one thing, they come up with these ludicrous types of measurements. It's like when NASA was talking about, how many elephants worth of thrust was coming out of the SLS or something. And I thought, who thought this stuff? I want to be in that press room and give them a spanking. So when it comes to these asteroids, these near-Earth objects, and hopefully we'll be seeing a lot more of them when the NEO Surveyor goes up in a bit. It sets into panic, and of course the media. I mean, I love the media. I'm part of the media, but it drives me nuts when, as they have to survive, they come up with these clickbait titles. Oh, it's this percentage chance, and they interpret it in such a way that it sounds as horrible as possible. And as I don't need to tell you, when JPL or whoever cites these things and starts doing the math, over the course of days and weeks, the number that would lead us to believe the percentage of potential for impact goes up, and then it always comes down again to the point that in the case of what's the one that's coming into 2029.
No, you bring up a good point. Maybe, on a lighter note, Rod, maybe there's too many mushrooms in the press conference, but I preferred mine sauteed with a good, medium rare steak, not to be ludicrous here at this late hour or early morning. But here, let's talk about this because the clock's going to run out here, and I appreciate everybody who calls this archive. So many great guests and so many great callers. Boy, I'll tell you, there's a lot of intellect out there, and that's why we like dialogue. But here we go. Asteroid 2024, YR4. We heard the news media and legacy media from reliable sources, they say, had a 3-point-something% chance, or maybe a little higher, of striking the Earth. Get a load of this, folks. December 22nd, 2032. Now some speculation exists, and if it happens, I want to be out there with the telescope and let everybody watch it.
Right.
That could now, what, Rod? Hit the moon, and it could be visible from Earth in all these scenarios. If it hit, we would see the most incredible meteor shower after that one. What do you say on that? That's bizarre.
I say I'm traveling to wherever I can best see that, because that would be a nice other end of life coda to having seen the Leonids. Now, what we didn't see, because it never happened, was in the early 60s when both the United States, late 50s, the United States and Soviet Union were lobbing nukes right and left in tests and throwing nuclear reactors in places where they shouldn't have been, wanted to detonate nuclear weapons on the moon so that we could show the other guys how tough we were. Unfortunately, the Russians had the big rockets, we had little puny ones, and their explosion would have been a lot bigger, but fortunately, we talked each other out of it, and it never happened. But that would have been a hell of a show.
Yes, and I saw some guy at a space conference, he had a T-shirt that said, "Nuke the Moon," and I never quite understood that. But I don't necessarily think, I'm not a explosives expert, but that may not be best for the health of the moon or for the Earth, right, Rod? That's not a good way to go out.
There was a lot of Nuke Mars T-shirts around for a while, and that all started with Elon Musk talking about, hey, if you want to terraform Mars, just explode nuclear weapons at the poles, and it'll melt all the water, and you'll have a verdant atmosphere. And it's like, well, yeah, but we still won't have magnetic field, and all that moisture is going to escape in a couple of years, so try again. But he's still making the shirts. So,
yeah, there you go. And they're selling out like hotcakes. Hey, Rod, you're our space expert. Talk to me about what's going on. People I get all the time. I do a lot of senior programs and young students and all this kind of stuff. And I don't always have the right answers, so I go to guys like yourself. What's going on with Starship and what's going to happen here? I mean, it's great to see the booster land and get the jaws grabbing it. But what's the next phase, and what do you think has to happen before Starship can be functional?
Well, what's frustrating about it is they keep changing the design of ship, which is the upper stage, the Starship itself. So they got the booster pretty well worked out, although they have made changes on that. They've made changes in how it stages with this hot staging thing. So instead of kicking the booster loose before it fires its rockets, the upper stage just fires its rockets to basically push the booster away. I'm simplifying it, but the problem is they keep extending Starship because Elon wants it to be able to carry more mass, and they're trying to work up to develop the lunar lander they promised NASA a number of years ago, which is nowhere near close to being ready. Right. And every time they do that, it makes testing harder because other things go wrong. When you change something up in the middle, that may or may not affect something in the back where the engines are living or where they've been having these fires and explosions. So, those of us who actually want the United States to be China back to the moon, which is the whole reason Trump started the Artemis program in 2016, we've got to get going. Now, we've got a good rocket. SLS is not popular, but it flies, Space Launch System. The Orion capsule works. We know that. We're going to be testing that next year with the flight past the moon, not landing. But in terms of getting the lunar surface, this is a game either between SpaceX or Blue Origin, who is also building a lander, and neither of them appear to be anywhere near ready. So we haven't seen any tests of the Blue Origin system. They're going to fly a dummy lander up there next year, I think, or later this year.
Yes.
But the real concern is SpaceX. There's a lot of promises made. There's a lot of money spent there, and they are going, for them, very slow, and we still haven't seen Starship even reach stable orbit.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we watch these, and it's not laughable. I mean, God bless. I'm amazed at his technology with his company, like many people are. I mean, when do you see a rocket with 16 million plus pounds of thrust, doubling more than that of the Saturn V? That has alone to be, commendable and given science awards and such for aerodynamics, for engineering, for aerospace.
You bet.
But I think in closing, we got a few minutes here before we blink out just temporarily here. This is interesting. I think it's got a long way to go. I mean, I don't be negative here to the audience, and certainly not to you. You know more about it. I don't think any manned exploration of Mars is going to take place anytime soon. Give us your latest. If Starship would work, and that's the platform, look in your crystal ball. When do you think that's going to be a habitable, doable journey to Mars to do it right? What year?
I mean, before anybody goes, we have to get enough robots there to start processing oxygen and water and actually helping construct the habitats, because you've got to be under a couple of meters of dirt and rock to be safe from the radiation, or underground in a cave, and we don't know for sure if there are any. So that's one thing. Mm-hmm. Radiation mediation, as we've discussed before, is a big deal, and as far as any of us know, none of that's been designed in the Starship. It's just a big, thin stainless steel tube. Yeah. So you got to figure out, you don't want your astronauts dead before they land on Mars, and between zero-G effects on the bones, on vision, on brain function, then there's radiation and all the nasty thing that happens to the human body with that. Mm-hmm. The projections are that these guys are going to be in no shape to make a landing. It would have to be completely automatic, and once they're on the surface, it could take them a couple of months to be healthy enough to pursue what they've got to do to make a mission work. So there's a lot of stuff to work out. He tends to simplify it an awful lot in his speeches. I love the guy. I mean, he's revolutionized launch. He's carrying more than half the payloads in the planet Earth now. And if it wasn't for him, the U.S. would be launching about 5 or 6 things a year. But the Starship thing has got to get worked out pretty soon. And I just wish, for both him and Bezos, they'd put skin in the game. I wish they'd put in more, because they could make all this happen in a matter of a couple of years if they started spending a significant amount of their fortune.
We got to run. Rod Pyle, how do they get in touch with you real quick as the clock runs out?
Pylebooks.com, contact information on the tab.
Always a pleasure, and thank you to our helmsmen as they navigate us through time and space. Stay tuned for the next iteration as we move on to Saturday morning, Eastern Time, midnight to 2 a.m. Sunday morning, Eastern Daylight Time. Always remember to keep your eyes to the skies. As we say, there are no tolls on this highway to the heavens, so explore it, ladies and gentlemen, and share this information with others so they can enjoy the splendors and universe and the mysteries of the universe. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Sky Experience. You can hear the Dr. Sky Experience Saturday mornings, midnight to 2 a.m. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
When you're having a baby, there's a lot on your mind. At Northwell's Staten Island University Hospital, you can rest easy with our reimagined labor and delivery experience. Our new Grapuso Women and Newborn Center provides private suites, overnight accommodations for a loved one, and a top-level NICU. All powered by the team that cares for the most moms and babies in New York. It's care made for Staten Island and made for you. Visit northwell.edu/newbaby. Staten Island University Hospital. Raise health.